We are fresh off of college football week 8. A lot of fun, exciting games, a lot of crazy shifts in the AP poll. We are looking ahead into college football week 9. Not going to do too much breaking down from the previous week. I want to take full advantage of Matt's time here. I'm here with Matt Grissom, betting analyst over at NCAA Insiders. Matt, how we doing, man?
Doing good. Surviving advanced last week. I think my best bets finished 4-2, so I can't be upset about it. But just this college football season, man, I feel like it's been grueling at times, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I had a great week as well on the books. The model projections actually did really well too. They finished 16-11 in college football. You can find those on Statlytics at our Twitter account. Yeah, I feel you too, because I know you're an Arkansas fan and I'm a Tennessee fan, and I know that we're both down tremendously bad on this Sunday, so not feeling too hot, are we?
At least your coaching staff stayed intact. We finally got rid of Dan Enos. A little breaking news today, thankfully. Probably 2 or 3 weeks too late, but when you put up 3 points against an abysmal Mississippi State offense, I'm curious to know what your numbers said about that one, because every projection I saw, Arkansas should have easily covered that game, much less win it. But yeah, that was abysmal.
Yeah. I was surprised. Our projections had Mississippi State covering. It actually had Arkansas winning by a touchdown, right on the nose at around 7. But yeah, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that whatsoever. So I saw Danny knows his buyout was a little short of $3 million, so it's unfortunate he couldn't live up to that.
Yep, just throw a little bit of Walmart money at him. Just move on, get down the road.
Yep. All right. Hey, well, let's dive into the fun ones. We got a Pac-12 matchup this week with a lot of implications. Oregon goes to Utah. Utah coming off a solid win against USC. Kind of surprised everybody. I was, in fact, on USC last week thinking they'd bounce back, but Utah is still pushing it without Cam Rising. They're doing really, really well. Their only loss this year is to number 19th ranked Oregon State, or at the time they were 19th ranked. But, Pac-12 title contention implications for both of these teams in this game that kind of feels like a championship game in itself. Oregon, their only losses to Washington in that thriller at Washington. So, this is it, man. This is a big time game between these two. Utah's 4.5-point underdog at home. 52.5-point total on some books. So, first reaction at that line, let me hear about it.
I jumped all over Oregon. I saw Circa posted theirs. I think Oregon -6. I like this anything south of a touchdown. I think what Dan Lanning has done for the Oregon Ducks this season, they just look like the most complete Pac-12 team. And I feel like we talk about it every week. I know we do on our show about just, how important these games are for the Pac-12, because ultimately I think they may cannibalize each other, but the one team that I think could come out of this and still have a shot at the playoff is Oregon. So I just not buying into the Bryson, whatever his last name is, for Utah being the quarterback. I just think Oregon's going to be too powerful. They're not going to be able to contend with the scoring. Utah won't. And that was the biggest question mark for USC last week, and why ultimately stayed away from trying to bet USC -7 in a bounce back spot, because their defense still can't stop anybody. And it's bad when your defense makes Utah's offense look good. And that's what they did. I don't think Oregon's going to allow that to happen for Utah. I think this is going to be a pretty easy game for Oregon.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love Oregon. If you can get it at 4.5, I do see it steaming up a little bit. The public's starting to come on them a little bit as well. I know it's few and far in between where we're looking at a Pac-12 matchup and where this is a defensive bout, because that's what it is. And it's right now Utah sits with the fifth best overall success rate on the defensive side of the ball. Oregon 37th. Oregon is really, really good at stopping both the run and the pass in comparison to a lot of the other Pac-12 teams. So again, I think that people will be surprised by the amount of defense that will actually go on in this game. The one thing, the edge that I think Oregon has is the offense. Obviously, they're known for their offense. Bo Nix is in his 10th year, it feels like. So He's been there for a while. They're second overall in overall offensive success rate on that team, especially on the passing game. They're sixth overall. So they actually don't have a running game. They use the short pass as a substitute for their running game. But nonetheless, I think they will find a lot of success in the air against this Utah team. And I think they'll be able to pace them. I don't think Bryson Barnes is going to keep Utah in this game on the offensive side of the ball. I think, in a defensive match like this where both teams kind of look equal on that side of the ball, I'm going to take the one who has the edge on the offensive side of the ball. So totally agree with you. Oregon, anything under a touchdown, I love. Not really touching the total. I don't have a feel for it because in a game like this, honestly, Oregon could really hold Utah to, some 14 points. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me at all. What, UCLA held them to a touchdown?
Mm-hmm.
Was that right? Or the other way around? I can't remember.
No, I think Utah held UCLA to a touchdown.
Okay. Yeah,
because I was on UCLA to cover that game.
Yeah, it's a boring game, but underbettors rejoice.
Yeah, it was like 14-7 or something like that. Yeah. Something absurd. All right, we're going to hop over to the SEC. This is the annual Georgia versus Florida game. This is in Jacksonville on a neutral field. The total is sitting at 50.5 right now, but I put a big asterisk on this game. There are a couple different lines that you can find. There's some large discrepancy with the books. I see 14.5 in favor of Georgia on DraftKings, but I see Georgia by 20.5 on BetMGM. So for me, I like the Florida to cover 20.5 on BetMGM. I did some line shopping earlier today. I feel like that's too many points for a game like this and for a UGA team where nobody really has some answers on.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing for me is the total. If you can get 50.5, I like that under. I think both defenses are pretty solid. Florida struggles to move the ball with Graham Mertz, and Georgia, I mean, they haven't looked like the Georgia of old with Stetson Bennett, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I always thought Stetson Bennett was highly overrated, but Carson Beck just hasn't looked that impressive to me. Now, granted, they're getting it done and they're undefeated. I do think Georgia probably covers 2 touchdowns. I don't know about 3, so you may be onto something there if you can price shop that and get the 20.5, something like that.
Yeah, I feel like at 20.5 on BetMGM, that's a backdoor cover at the minimum, at the very least. So for a rivalry game like this, especially where Georgia is missing their best offensive player in Brock Bowers, I fully expect Florida to be able to at least keep it close in the first half and then definitely keep it within 3 touchdowns in the second half. Florida's sneaky good on the offensive side of the ball. They're 23rd overall in the nation in overall success rate. They run the ball extremely well. Montrell Harris and ETN as a 1-2 punch in the backfield is an underrated duo right there. Georgia is Georgia. We know how they go. Elite defense. Their offense is a little bit better than everybody kind of gives them credit for. Excuse me. Carson Beck has made some really good throws, but they're not consistent. They also lack explosiveness. So, and what I say by that is they're actually 7th overall in the nation in offensive success rate, but they're 101st overall in total explosive plays. So you don't see much explosiveness from this UGA offense, but they can certainly ground and pound, and they're consistent with what they do. So I fully expect this to be a slow-paced slog, kind of like what you said. I think it'll be more of an under-type game unless things just get really out of whack. But 3 touchdowns, man, that's too much. So 20.5 for me. If I can get that on BetMGM, I already sniped it. So I love that line. So should be a fun one.
Yeah, it will be. Love a good rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen. Plus, it's college football.
True that, man.
Betting on
True
kids, something stupid's going to happen, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Hey, moving on. Duke goes to Louisville. 2 surprising teams that we've seen so far in this year. Duke's coming off a tough loss to FSU. They were actually leading a lot of that game until they gave up 21 straight points in the fourth quarter. Riley Leonard was shaking up again. He did re-injure that ankle, which was quite unfortunate. So I'm not sure if we'll see him in this game, but it's a top 25 matchup nonetheless. Louisville's 4.5-point home favorites, notably because of the Riley Leonard injury. I think if Riley Leonard was a full go, Duke would actually be favored in this game. I think he's definitely the better quarterback than Jake Plummer, just based off of the eye test. Louisville's coming off a bye, so they'll be well rested and ready to go, well prepared for this game. Duke, I love their run game. I think they can run it on anybody. It's almost, I kind of think that they don't necessarily need Riley Leonard in this game to make it close, but, it is 4.5 points for Louisville at home. Duke's quarterback's injured. They're coming off a kind of a morale degrading loss. What do you think in this game? What do you think about this line?
Hats off to Mike Elko because what he's done with the Blue Devils has been impressive. I think a lot of that is on the legs and arm of Riley Leonard. That's going to be the biggest question mark for me. I think if you can get the 3.5 with Leonard playing, I like Duke.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's not going to play, this may be just a spot where Louisville, really takes that step forward and takes advantage of coming off a bye.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's hard to get a good feel on this. And Louisville's defense is really kind of the big picture for me here, especially with looking at a Duke team where Riley Leonard is going to be out. They're 21st overall and overall defensive success rate. And they do really well stopping the both rushing attack and the passing attack on the defensive side of the ball. They limit all explosiveness, which on the flip side, Duke really hinges their game off of their explosive running game. They have two running backs back there who are really, really strong, and they're 14th overall in rushing explosive play rate. So I think with that combination with Riley Leonard out, with Duke just kind of, morale is low, I think Louisville kind of gets them in a spot like this. I do agree with you. I love what Mike Elko's done. I think he deserves a bid for Coach of the Year this year, but Louisville coming off a bye, being more prepared, being healthier, and being at home. I think I'm going to take that. I think a lot of people are going to see what Duke did with FSU last year and try to steam up Duke. But I'm going to sit here with Louisville and trust that Jake Plummer can get it done.
Yeah, I haven't updated my power ratings yet, but assuming Riley Leonard doesn't go, no home field advantage, I would make Duke actually a 3-point favorite. So whatever you want to take off that for home field, and then the news about Riley Leonard.
Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting.
And one thing that I hate using the transitive property when I compare teams. Like, somebody can beat this team, and that doesn't mean that they're better than that team. But
right.
The way that Louisville did play against Notre Dame, and the way Notre Dame has one of the best rushing attacks in FBS. Behind Audric Estime, and the way that Louisville kind of contained that rushing attack and held that offense back, I feel like Duke's going to come in with a run-first approach with Riley Leonard down, and I feel like Louisville at home is going to be able to stalemate them at the line and beat them in the trenches, and I think Louisville kind of gets it done right here.
Yeah. The other question, too, is, Louisville plays Notre Dame. They get up probably a little bit more for that game than they might against Duke. That would be one thing I would wait and see, especially, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but if Riley Leonard doesn't play for Duke, I'm almost more worried about backing Louisville in the sense that they may think, all right, they're without their quarterback, we should handle them pretty easily, and then kind of sleepwalk through this game. And as we saw yesterday against Florida State, who Florida State to me is one of the top 3-4 teams in the country, and Duke did whatever they wanted to do, both on the ground and through the air against Florida State. So I don't know. I haven't made a decision on that one yet, but that may be one that I end up betting just as the news comes out during the week about Leonard.
That's an interesting point. I could, you can make a good case for that, especially with the schedule that Louisville has ahead of themselves. They have Virginia and Virginia Tech coming up, but then later in the season they play Miami and then, of course, Kentucky at the end of the season. So I could see them kind of taking this game lightly if Riley Leonard is deemed out. That's a good point. Didn't really think about that. But yeah,
part of my handicap. There's always parity in college football. It's what makes it great. But sometimes you just, like you were saying earlier, you can't really quantify some scenarios. And I feel like more often than not, there's times where the team that should win just doesn't show up. And if you don't show up for even a half in college football, you can lose. So uh, that may worry me right there, just back in Louisville.
Yeah, 100%. And Mike Elko's been able to coach his way into a successful season right so far. So no reason he can't against Louisville in Louisville. All right. Next big one. Oklahoma goes to Kansas. Kansas is a 10.5 home field underdog. The point total is 63.5. I kind of put this one on because I feel like this could be a sneaky matchup for OU, especially coming off of a scare last week against UCF at home. That was a little bit surprising, I think, for the college football world. Kansas is coming off a bye this week, and they potentially get Jalen Daniels back. And we remember how electrifying Jalen Daniels is from last year. He can definitely add some value to this Kansas offense. This is also the last time that these two teams will probably meet for the foreseeable future, depending on scheduling and stuff, just due to the nature of Oklahoma going to the SEC. So this can be a get 'em game for Kansas, and I feel like 10.5 points maybe a bit much. Not too sure. I still like the matchup for Oklahoma on paper statistically. Oklahoma is, really, really solid and more favorable on both sides of the ball. Kansas has the offense to kind of keep up, but they definitely don't have the defense to be able to stop this OU team. What do you like about this spread? What do you like about this game? Let me hear it.
Cashed a lot of tickets early on with Kansas, and a lot of that had to do with Jalen Daniels. If he doesn't play, I want no part of it. If he does, I may have to back the Jayhawks here. Oklahoma didn't look impressive. It doesn't surprise me because I had bet on UCF, I think, for the last 3 weeks. They let me down each time. The one time I don't bet on them, they cover and almost went outright against OU. So, again, kind of like I said earlier, it's the parity of college football. OU on paper probably should have beat UCF by 2 or 3 touchdowns. They didn't. And it wasn't that they played bad. I think UCF just came out. Now, granted, they got John Rice Plumlee back, and he played really well. But I don't know until I know for sure that Jalen Daniels is gonna play. But then again, you look back and I know they were without him against Texas, but Kansas kind of laid an egg against Texas. So I don't know at what point you have to start tiering these teams. I would say Texas and OU are at the top of the Big 12, and then everybody else is much lower down, just as far as talent level across the board. But I think anybody could get had on any given Saturday in college football. So a lot of it is going to rely on Jalen Daniels and the news surrounding him being able to play.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm trying to keep a close eye on this. I put some notifications out on some Kansas beat writers to make sure I try and beat the crowd to this line as soon as the news breaks. Just because I feel this Kansas offense is kind of an underrated unit in the sense that what they've been able to do without Jalen Daniels with their backup quarterback is really impressive stuff. They've been able to run the ball well. They've been able to find success in the passing game. They lack a bit of explosiveness that they used to have with Jalen Daniels, but they have put up top 25 metrics on the offensive side of the ball. No doubt. The problem is that their defense is just horrible. They're 117th in FBS and overall defensive success rate, 122nd in overall passing success rate allowed on the defensive side of the ball, and they give up a ton of explosive plays in the rushing game. So this is what's going to be the crux for Kansas is can they stop OU once or twice? Can they do it? And I think they can definitely keep pace with OU on the offensive side of the ball, but it's just, will their defense be able to do something crazy? And being at home, I like the odds to do that. But again, this game hinges on Jalen Daniels. If Jalen Daniels plays and I get good feedback that he is fully healthy, I'm definitely going to take it. I'm going to try and beat everybody to the punch on the books to get that 10.5. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will. I'm excited to watch that one.
Yeah. I think it'll be a quietly good game, one of the better games of the week. So I had to throw this one in here. Tennessee does go to Kentucky. I think it's one that a lot of people in the SEC are looking forward to. Kentucky's a 3.5 point home underdog. This line's already kind of moving. I'm seeing it at 3 on some books, and I see a good majority of the public is starting to steam up on it. Tennessee's coming off of a really tough loss last week to Bama. They gave up 27 unanswered points in the back half of the game.
Don't remind
Kentucky,
me.
they coming off the bye week, so they're well rested. They're healthy. Devin O'Leary has not been the answer that they were hoping for, but he's been fine game managing. Their run game is really the facet of Kentucky that has really taken scene. They really rely on that run game per usual. We've seen this in the past out of these teams. So this should be a fun one. It's in Lexington. It's a night game. If you remember 2 years ago, the night game against Tennessee and Kentucky was absolutely crazy back when Will Levis was the quarterback and Hendon Hooker was in his first year as a starter. So potential shootout, maybe. I don't really see this out of these two offenses, but Tennessee, their morale is low. Kentucky's coming off a bye week. They're well rested. What do you think about this line? Let me hear about it.
As I sit over here and choke, got me choked up thinking about the Vols losing that bet. But I don't know. Devin Leary's not been good, like you said. I think Tennessee bounces back, and excuse me, I could easily see him covering this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it's just hard to get back up after a game like last week. I'm just very appalled by what happened. I would have thought with Heupel calling the shots that he would have been able to keep pace of that offensive production after getting up like that against Alabama. But Alabama found their way. Now we look forward to Kentucky. Kentucky has a really good defensive unit. It's not great by any means, but solid. Certainly, they limit explosive plays. They're really good at limiting the rushing attack. That's one thing that Tennessee does do well, is they run the ball extremely, extremely well. Their passing game has been down, which is a surprising thing coming out of a Josh Heupel-led offense. Heupel is typically known for putting up points, putting up statistics on the offensive side of the ball, but the Joe Milton has not been able to get it going in the air. We saw a little bit in the first half against Alabama, but if he can't get it going against Kentucky, I can easily see Tennessee falling short in this game and not being able to fully rely on the rushing attack like they were against Texas A&M. This game won't be at home. Tennessee fares much differently at home compared to away. They've really not been able to find that trademarked road win yet in the Heupel era. So we're still kind of looking for that. We had one against Kentucky 2 years ago, but that wasn't a huge game. So Tennessee definitely lacks on the road. Kentucky can certainly keep pace of this game on the ground. So I think this one will be a slow-paced slog. The total's 52.5, and I would not be shocked if this game goes under. I feel like a lot of people wanted the under or expected the under in the Tennessee-Alabama game, and Tennessee was able to come out hot, put some points on the board, and required Alabama to go, 27 unanswered like they did. But I feel like this game will actually be the game in which people expected last week out of Bama, Tennessee. I think this one will be the slow-paced rushing attack, hit the under. I kind of like the 52.5 under here. What do you think?
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Thanks for carrying us through there. But that, like you said, I liked the under last week, and for whatever reason, Alabama's defense, they couldn't get a stop, and then they did, and unfortunately, we know how that ended. Tennessee's kind of been surprising to me with how good their defense has been. So with Leary being turnover prone, I think you're on to something here. I think Tennessee, which if you're going to give me a field goal and a half with Tennessee and the under, I think that's how, that's their roadmap to winning that game, is keep it a low scoring dogfight, and you can ultimately get out of Lexington with a cover.
Yeah, and that'll be the key to success, is getting the defensive unit going for Tennessee again. They have been surprisingly one of the best in the SEC, rushing the passer and stopping the run. Their secondary has been better than last year. It's certainly not great, but it's definitely better than what they were last year, even though that's not saying much. But I I think this one will be it'll come down to the trenches. And, I think Tennessee's got the better defensive line, but I think Kentucky's got the better offensive line. So it'll be an interesting bout. I love the under here. I never throw official picks on the Tennessee Vols due to me being a double grad. So, take what I say as you will. I am a little bit biased, but certainly will be a fun one in prime time in Lexington. So,
I've got a lot of friends.
all right, that wraps
Vols
it up for
fans.
the big game.
They're not worried about being biased. They'll bet on Tennessee blindly, but they'll also tell me when they're not in a good spot. So I feel like being a fan sometimes it does benefit you if you're smart about it and you don't just have blind faith all the time. It sounds like you know your team pretty well, though.
Yeah, that's the thing is I know my team really well, better than anybody. But my thing is like I either bet on the Vols or I don't bet that game at all because it's like sacrilegious for me to put money against the Vols, even though in my heart I know like this team will probably beat us by X amount. They'll probably cover the spread, but I just can't do it. I can't do it. It pains me, so I always take the Vols.
Yeah, I don't have a problem backing the team playing the Razorbacks. If I think it's a good spot, I'll bet against them all the time. It just makes the loss sweeter if I cash a bet.
True. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. All right, well, that wraps it up for kind of big game breakdowns for me and the most anticipated ones of the week. I had some notable lines that I wanted to walk through really quick. The ones that caught my eye the most, it wouldn't be right if we had a college football show and didn't talk about Deion's Colorado team. Colorado's 17.5-point road underdogs at UCLA. Man, I don't know what to think because I feel like Colorado could come out here and win outright and, absolutely air it out against this UCLA defense. But at the same time, I feel like UCLA's offense can do the same to Colorado. So I was curious what your thoughts were here. I had this line in here. Definitely wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this line and why?
It's probably too many points. My power ratings, again, I haven't updated them, but I make this UCLA minus 12. But after your last appearance for Colorado, when you blow that lead against Stanford, how is that locker room feeling right now? I mean, they played a great game and then didn't. I mean, it was like a tale of two games in one. That defense is scary, and I know UCLA's offense isn't really anything to write home about. Dante Moore he's capable to make plays, but as far as Pac-12 offenses, I wouldn't say UCLA is one of the best ones. It's their defense that really gives me a scare. But I saw this total on Circa was 71.5, and I thought that was way too high. I actually thought it was a typo because I think UCLA is capable of only putting up maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns against Colorado, especially with Travis Hunter playing on the defensive side of the ball. After Deion Sanders' team gets blown out in the second half, I don't think you have a whole lot of that. I think they really just come out and try to play good defense. They know that their offense can move the ball, but in the event that they can't, I love the under even more because I know UCLA is not putting up 60 points by themselves. So I think an under in that one, and that's a really high total, and I know a lot of people don't like to bet unders and high totals like that because they seemingly always go over, but that's one where it's not going to surprise me if UCLA wins this game like 31-17.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. And that's one of the reasons I actually put this in here is my talking point was if this game was at Colorado, I think I'd feel a little bit differently. But with it being at UCLA, with UCLA's defense not being great, I'm not going to sit here and say UCLA's defense is great by any means. But I think it's a little bit better than what people give them credit for. We saw them stop Utah, or not stop Utah, but hold Utah down to like 14 or something like that. But I think that they'll contend really well on the defensive side of the ball against this Colorado team at home. And so I think the key there is being at home. And if you like you said, the under here, I think it's too big of a spread. If you think the under is going to hit, I think it's too big of a spread for me to be comfortable with taking. But I think UCLA can do a good job of capping this Colorado team. Morale is low. They don't have a lot of depth. They don't have any depth, really.
Yeah.
That's the fact of the matter is with Travis Hunter playing, 160 snaps a game, it feels like, on both sides of the football. And with nobody there to be able to come in, everybody transferred, left, whatever. I think the lack of Colorado's depth really plays a factor here. And I think UCLA comes out guns blazing and really paces this Colorado team and really does a number to them. So
yeah, I mean,
the under's a good, interesting take.
I look back at the Washington State game.
Go
I
ahead.
really like Cam Ward. They only put up 17 points, Cam Ward and that Washington State offense. Oregon State only put up 36. Stanford only put up 7. They've pitched a few 7-point games. But, yeah, I think UCLA's defense will be able to keep this lower scoring. And if they're going to cover that 17, I don't think they do. But the only way I see them doing it is to keep Colorado off the board.
100%.
I like the under a lot.
Yep. Man, that Colorado team has been fun, though. It's been fun.
Great
All
for
right.
college football.
Next notable line I had down here. Do what?
It's great for college football. I think college football needs Dion.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah. Whether you love him or you hate him, we need him. That's just a fact of the matter. All right. Mississippi State goes to Auburn. Auburn was 4.5 on Caesars. They're 5.5 and sometimes 6.5 on some books. This is a little bit of discrepancy here. I found 4.5 on Caesars. I kind of like taking Auburn at home, 4.5 at home on Caesars. But we just saw Mississippi State hold KJ Jefferson and the Hogs. I know this one's tough to talk about. 2-3 points though. So I'm not sure if I can really give credit to Mississippi State's defense or if I need to kind of knock Arkansas's offense off their offensive production. And so this is one I wanted to ask you about and what your takeaways from Mississippi State were after more than likely watching a full game from them last week. Was Mississippi State's defense actually good, or was this just a lack of motivation from KJ Jefferson and the Hogs on the offensive side of the ball? What do you think?
I think it was just a bad offensive performance. There's no way around it. It's why our OC got fired. You got to look back, though. Arkansas's defense has played pretty well this season, and only holding Mississippi State to 7 points is pretty impressive. I think Mississippi State is a decent team, but they're not good by any means. I think Auburn is definitely the play here. Mike Wright, he completed 8 passes against Arkansas's offense or defense, 85 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I think Auburn is the way to go here. They've had a gut-wrenching schedule. I think they've rattled off 4 losses in a row. They played Ole Miss really close last weekend. I think this is a get-right spot for Auburn.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I love them at 4.5 on Caesars. Right now it's 5.5, 6.5 on some other big books, but if you can line shop and get them at 4.5 like I did, I think that's a really solid play. And I think Hugh Freeze desperately wants an SEC win. So like him at home.
Probably going to get 3.
Last notable line for me. You think so?
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State at Vanderbilt at Arkansas. That's 3 pretty easy SEC opponents right there.
The Arkansas one for me is going to be tough because Arkansas should win. I don't think anybody will argue with me against that, but it's just what is their morale sitting? What is their confidence level going to be, and what is the coaching staff going to look like in general by that point? So it'll be interesting. All right. Last notable line for me, Clemson coming off a tough loss to Miami. They lost 28-20 against kind of a gut wrencher. Cade Klubnik did not play well in that game last week, but they go to NC State, play an ACC foe. NC State is 11-point home underdogs against this Clemson team, and this one kind of shocked me a little bit. I know Clemson, better roster, hands down, but NC State always has a very, very respectable defense, and I was kind of shocked at the point spread here. I thought that NC State would be able to keep it within 10, potentially, especially just due to this being a defensive bout. I don't see a lot of points in this game whatsoever, but with NC State at plus 11 at home, I wanted to get your thoughts on this game and if you thought NC State could keep it within 11.
You know, we talked about different tiers of Big 12 teams, and I think you've got that in the ACC too. I think as bad as we want to say that Clemson fell off, they probably didn't in this game. I think Clemson probably does win this game and cover. My number's 12 right now in favor of Clemson, so I feel like it's pretty right. Um, I think I backed NC State against Notre Dame. They didn't look good. I think that's the only game I've watched this season. But I've watched a lot of Clemson, and I think Klubnik, he's got the tools. They just haven't been in a good position to win, and I think a lot of that falls back on Dabo and his play calling, situational game management. I think they get right here, though. I think Clemson pretty well rolls this game.
Yeah, and the one bone I have to pick with Clemson is they did a lot to get Garrett Riley to come in and be the offensive coordinator for them. And I've listened to a couple of press conferences, and what I've gathered is it feels like Dabo is almost limiting Garrett Riley's play calling ability. I've heard multiple times him say, "We brought Garrett Riley in to run the Clemson offense," and I think if Garrett Riley had it his way, he would run his own offense, the one he ran at TCU. And I think that's where they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot. If you bring a guy like Garrett Riley in, let him loose. You brought him in for a reason. Let him do his own thing. Let him develop Cade Klubnik. We've seen the ability out of Cade and what he can do with the ball in his hands. And I think he can be a really great passer. But again, I think Dabo is just kind of having like a little bit of a power struggle right now. He doesn't want to let, certain things out of his grasp. And I think that's where the issue is coming in at hand at Clemson. I think they need to let Garrett Riley do his thing and just let him roll.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've got a competent quarterback. There's no reason to try to keep the training wheels on him. Take him off, let him go.
Yeah, so I'm glad we covered that one. That one was interesting for me. I do think Clemson has the roster to beat nearly anybody in the country. They definitely have the talent to be able to do so. I think they're just kind of killing themselves right now. So, we'll see. That'll be a fun one. Underrated SEC matchup there. Matt, do you have any other lines that stuck out to you in the early opening Sunday?
I jumped on Oregon State -2. I like them against, I think they're playing Arizona. I think Arizona's decent for a Pac-12 team, but I feel like I'm just repeating myself about the tiers of teams. I think Oregon State with DJ Ugalele, whatever you want to call him, DJU. I think he is on a different level, and I don't think Arizona is going to be able to keep up with them. I think that was the only other one that I played. I do also like the under in that one, 58.5. I'm not sure what the number is right now, but I think Oregon State is another one of those serviceable Pac-12 teams that they could cause a lot of havoc later in the season. I think when they play, I think they get Washington near the end of the season.
Yeah.
I know they've already got a loss, but I think Oregon State's a pretty good team that people may not be giving a lot of credit to just because they're not an undefeated Pac-12 team right now. But that's definitely one that I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, definitely. They've definitely hung with the best, and they handily beat Utah just a few couple weeks ago. So it's a good point. It's a sneaky line. I didn't catch that, but yeah, I know you mentioned it earlier. The Pac-12 is going to beat themselves up to oblivion, so they're almost going to eliminate themselves. It's crazy that in the last year of the Pac-12, as we know it, they're arguably one of the best conferences in college football right now.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah. Crazy how that works, right?
Yeah.
Crazy how that works. All right, man. Hey, that wraps it up for me and what we got. We appreciate you joining us. Matt, tell us where the people can find you.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. You can follow me at Grissom on X. That is my full username. It's Grissom on X.
Okay. It should be right there in the frame. If you guys can see it, if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it right under there. And Matt, again, we appreciate you joining us. guys, we will be back here next week to talk college football week 10.